Every December, Trevor and Jess put up lovely Christmas decorations and their daughter Maddie puts the star on top of the tree. However, as Maddie grows older, she loses interest in this tradition. A year after the couple gets a divorce, Trevor lives alone in Hertfordshire. His home is humble and electricity needs a coin to get it to work, but he keeps up his Christmas traditions. He eats some candy from an advent calendar and decorates the tree with a wrapper. When Jess calls, Trevor has to go outside in the cold to get good reception. He says he can't wait for his family to come over for the holidays to show them around, but Jess interrupts him with big news. Her new boyfriend has a villa in Barbados, so she and Maddie will spend the holidays there. Jess' boyfriend is also offered to pay for Maddie's college, but Trevor tells her that won't be necessary because he can afford it. He doesn't tell Jess that he actually has a lot of debt. Trevor is so sad that he turns off the lights on his tree. At the local school, Trevor helps with the organization of the Christmas celebrations. The principal calls him to her office so they can have a last toast, reminding him that this is his last day on the job. When she asks if he has another job lined up, he says no. Later someone rings the bell and Trevor rushes to open the door, only to find a baby in a basket. He shows the baby to a teacher, who explains that one of the mothers would let them use their child for the nativity scene. Trevor puts the baby in the manger and the event can finally begin. During the play, Trevor is in charge of the music and the sound effects. He also keeps checking his phone and learns that Maddie's college will be extremely expensive. At that moment he gets a call from a house-sitting company he used to work for and receives a job offer. While pulling at a rope to lift the star on the stage, Trevor tries to explain that he doesn't house-sit anymore. When the employee tells him what the pay would be, Trevor is so shocked by the big number that he lets go of the rope. The star falls on the stage, scaring the children. Trevor is now interested in the job, but he has to be in London by 5 for an interview. After the event is over, Trevor turns off all the lights and leaves the school, but he comes back when he hears someone crying. The baby is still in the stage, so Trevor picks him up and goes to the principal's office to look for the parents' phone in the directory. He tries calling them but nobody picks up. Moments later Trevor is desperate to take the train to London but the parents still haven't called back, so he decides to go directly to their house. To his shock, the mother has her baby, and she explains she couldn't take her to the play because she's sick. This means the baby in the basket was abandoned at the school. Trevor calls the principal for help, but she's already leaving town so she tells him to solve the issue himself. Then he calls the police, who can only send someone in 3 to 4 hours. Since Trevor needs to leave, they advise him to try social services. He immediately calls social services and finally gets someone who agrees to pick up the baby. While waiting, Trevor packs his bag. When he turns around, the baby is gone. He runs to look for him and catches him right before the kid goes down the stairs. Moments later the social services agent finally arrives, but when Trevor is about to hand him the baby, he finds the basket empty again. Trevor starts looking for the child around the house and calls him Baby Jesus, so the social services agent thinks he may be crazy. He leaves his card on the table and tells Trevor to call him if he really finds a baby, then he leaves. Eventually Trevor finds the baby under the tree table and runs to hand him to the agent, but the guy is already driving away. Trevor tries to call him, however the agent won't answer his phone. He decides to drop the baby off at the social services office, only to discover that it's already closed. Next he calls the police station, but his reception is poor and his phone battery dies. With no other choice, Trevor has to take the baby with him to London. A train ride later, they arrive at a very luxurious building, and Trevor makes sure the baby doesn't appear on the camera when he rings the bell. While waiting in the lobby, he hides the baby inside his backpack until Petra comes to pick him up. Now Trevor has to awkwardly walk into the elevator so she won't see the child's face. After introductions, Petra shows Trevor a fob that must be used to access the apartment in Penthouse. During the elevator ride the baby makes some cooing noises, and Trevor has to pretend they came from him. They make it to the penthouse that Trevor will house sit and he's impressed by its beauty. The baby keeps making noises, so Trevor shakes his body to rock him. This only causes the baby to fart, so Trevor pretends it was him again and Petra tells him to put the bag down, so he walks backward and leaves the bag near the entrance. Afterward Petra gives Trevor a tour of the place, which has way too many rooms. The baby uses the chance to push the bag down and escape. When the adults return to the starting point, Trevor sees the baby's bottle rolling on the floor. Petra goes over the rules, reminding him that he isn't allowed to bring guests of any kind while the baby crawls behind her. Thankfully he's gone by the time she turns around. Then Petra shows him the rest of the rooms and Trevor hides the baby's bottle inside a vase, pretending he's just admiring the art. When he finally finds the baby, he hides him inside the trash can before Petra can see him. He wonders when he'll know if he got the job and Petra says it started 15 minutes ago. She leaves him her card and the fob, telling him not to lose it because there are no copies. The whole staff is on vacation, so nobody should show up during the holidays. After Petra leaves, Trevor charges his phone and finds a strange remote control. When he presses the buttons, the statue on the balcony moves. At that moment the baby makes some noise and Trevor finally remembers to pull him out. However his phone starts ringing, so he puts him in the can again and gives him a kitchen timer as a toy. Trevor picks up the call from the police officer, who says he's finally ready to pick up the baby. However since Trevor has moved to a new address, He now has to contact the London police. The officer promises to pass along the details to his colleagues. Then Trevor checks on the baby and discovers he needs to be changed. He searches the apartment and decides to use a fancy shawl as an improvised diaper. The baby gets a bath and the shawl is held up by office clips. Trevor puts the dirty diaper in a plastic bag and leaves it on the balcony. Afterward he retrieves the bottle from the vase to feed the child, but the milk runs out fast. He brings the baby with him to the supermarket to get more milk and some baby food, but he needs to know the baby's weight to choose the right jar. Trevor ends up weighing him with the store's produce scale. On their way out he realizes he can't carry everything, so he takes the shopping cart. After they leave the store, Trevor gets a phone call from Georgia, who works in London's social services. The police told her about the situation, so she'll pick up the baby tomorrow afternoon. After dinner, the baby poops again and Trevor has to use more shawls to change him. When it's time to sleep, Trevor puts the baby inside a basket. In the middle of the night, Trevor is awakened by the baby crying. He tries lots of things to make him sleep again, like songs and jumping on the bed, but nothing works. Eventually the baby burps and that finally calms him down. Then Trevor puts him back in the basket, only for the baby to cry again. Trevor searches for something he can use and finds a bottle of champagne, so he opens it and gives the cork to the baby to suck on, which quickly puts him to sleep. The next morning, Trevor is woken up when the baby spits the cork out and cries. It's now time to change the baby, but there's only one shawl left. Trevor orders diapers online and throws all the dirty shawls on the balcony. Then he tries to have a relaxing breakfast, only to be interrupted by the kitchen timer. He discovers the baby is trying to go upstairs and has to run to stop him. When the delivery guy arrives, Trevor leaves the baby on the floor and rushes to the bell system, but he doesn't know what button to use. The delivery guy leaves, so Trevor runs to the street and stops him just in time to get his order. When he returns to the elevator, he's horrified to realize he left the fob in the penthouse. While the baby starts climbing the stairs, Trevor remembers that the cleaner has a fob too, so he searches for the contact list on the reception desk. He wants to call her, but he left his phone in the apartment too. At that moment a tenant named Lionel enters the building and Trevor borrows his phone to call the cleaner Elsa for help. Elsa can bring the fob over, but she needs to call Petra first and promises to contact him later. Since Trevor needs to wait for that call, he follows Lionel to his apartment and ends up sitting with the family for lunch. Soon Georgia arrives and nobody comes to the door, so she leaves a message on Trevor's phone saying that if he doesn't call back, she'll have to refer the matter to the police. Lionel and his family are happy to get a video call from his daughter, which is interrupted by Elsa's call. Trevor immediately takes the phone from them and learns that Elsa will be there in 30 minutes with the fob. While the baby reaches the top of the stairs, Trevor meets with Elsa in the lobby. She quickly activates the elevator and leaves. Trevor gets ready to go up only to realize he left the diapers in the reception. He takes off his shoe and puts it between the doors to stop the elevator from closing while he goes looking for his bag. However, the doors keep hitting the shoe and move it little by little until it's out of the way, so the elevator closes again. While the baby explores the apartment and finds the laundry chute, Trevor runs on the street and finds Elsa at a cafe. Meanwhile, a tenant with a dog enters the elevator and the dog steals the shoe. Elsa agrees to activate the elevator again and soon Trevor returns to the penthouse, but he can't see the baby. Following the sound of the child's laughter, he enters the laundry room just in time to catch the baby as he falls out of the chute. That night, Trevor calls Georgia and leaves a message explaining the situation. Then he gets a call from Maddie, who explains she's in London because her flight was cancelled due to bad weather. She admits she doesn't want to go to Barbados and wants to spend Christmas with her dad. The conversation is interrupted when the speakers mentions the Barbados flight, so she quickly hangs up. In the middle of the night, Trevor hears the elevator open and someone entering the penthouse. He goes to investigate and finds a young couple with a baby stealing food. They beg him not to call the police and explain that they have a fob that they found in the basement, where they've been living in secret. They were kicked out of their apartment and are in debt, so they have no money for food. Trevor takes pity on them and gives them some baby food before they leave. The next morning Trevor is awakened by the baby spitting out the cork again. Georgia calls him and confirms she'll come by at midday. Seeing that they still have time, Trevor decides to take the baby on a walk. He uses a plastic bag on his shoeless foot and the shopping cart as a stroller. Mothers in the park think the baby is cute and ask Trevor for his name, so he says the baby is called Jesus. Suddenly Trevor's shoe falls in the middle of the park. He immediately picks it up and tries to put it on, only for the dog to run to him to steal it. Trevor throws a stick to distract the dog and manages to put on his shoe, however the dog comes back and starts nibbling his foot. Then Trevor throws his other shoe and the dog leaves with it before Trevor can realize what he just did. Later the couple visits Trevor. They brought him a baby hat to thank him for his kindness and share that they're on their way to the housing department to hopefully get a house before the holidays. Trevor volunteers to take care of their baby while they deal with bureaucracy. Afterward Trevor feeds both babies and puts them to sleep in baskets. When Georgia finally arrives, he rushes to the lobby with a basket and signs the paperwork while she takes a picture for the records. Trevor asks her to keep him updated, but she explains that since it's not his baby, all information from now on is confidential. After Georgia leaves, the couple comes back. Trevor takes them to the apartment and the couple is horrified to discover that the baby is not theirs. Trevor realizes he gave Georgia the wrong one, so he runs to the street and finds her arguing with the cops over a parking ticket. While she's distracted, Trevor takes the baby from the car and rushes back to the building. In the elevator he accidentally drops the fob into the shaft, but thankfully he has the extra one he took from the couple. In the apartment, Trevor exchanges the babies before running back outside. Georgia is already gone, so he calls her and leaves a message. At that moment Trevor gets a call from Petra. There's been a change of plans and the penthouse owners will be coming for Christmas after all. Trevor must stay until the housekeeper arrives to take over, but Petra assures him he'll be paid anyway. Moments later Trevor gets a call from housekeeper Janet, who explains she's in Scotland and will arrive in London late. She asks Trevor to do the shopping with the credit card found in the kitchen drawer and sends the very long shopping list directly to the printer. He ends up buying so much stuff that he needs 4 carts to take it home. Meanwhile Georgia finally realizes that the baby isn't in her car and calls a police officer, who sends out an emergency alert. Once the groceries are in the apartment, Trevor takes some stuff to the couple living in the basement to apologize for the baby mix-up. In the lobby, the dog walker picks up the tenant's pet and the shoe is dropped in the reception. On his way out of the basement, Trevor sees the shoe and takes it back, so the crazy dog follows him into the elevator. In the apartment, Trevor hears the baby cry, so he grabs the basket before returning to the lobby to get rid of the dog. However, the walker is already gone. Trevor has no choice but to leave a note in the elevator saying where the dog is, then he returns to the penthouse with both the baby and the pet. When the dog sees all the groceries, he immediately steals a sausage. Trevor tries to distract him with his shoe keychain and when the dog bites it, he ends up stealing and swallowing the fob. After panicking, Trevor takes the dog to the elevator and confirms that the fob still works from inside the animal's body. Then Janet calls and explains that because of the bad weather, she'll arrive in London in the middle of night, so she tells him where the decorations are and asks him to set them up. She also informs him that someone will drop a tree later. While Trevor is distracted, the dog eats half of the sausage. The phone rings again with a call from Annabelle, the owner of the dog. Since Trevor needs the fob, he tells her he isn't home at the moment and promises to call her later. Afterward he goes out shopping with the baby and the dog to get more sausage. On his way back, he sees that Lionel is moving out because he's been expelled from the building. In the apartment, Trevor discovers that the tree has already been delivered. Not knowing where to put it, he decides to take the base from the moving statue and use it for the tree, which he lifts thanks to the moving lights. After hiding the statue in the housekeeper's office, Trevor decorates the tree with the help of the moving base. At that moment the dog whines because he needs to poop, so Trevor takes him to the street. He picks up the poop with a doggy bag and touches it until he confirms the fob is in there. On their way back they find Annabelle in the elevator, so he gives her the dog and awkwardly uses the doggy bag on the controls in front of her. The next morning Trevor gets a call from Janet, who explains she hasn't left Scotland because all transport has been cancelled. This means Trevor will have to cook the feast, so Janet sends the instructions to the printer. Trevor spends the next several hours hard at work while the baby watches from a pot. He cooks a huge amount of dishes, sets up the table, and even puts up the nativity scene. At 5, Trevor hides the baby upstairs and waits for the owner's arrival, but nobody comes. He calls Petra and pretends he's been helping Janet with the feast, so he asks for an update. Petra apologizes and explains she forgot to inform them that the owners aren't coming after all because they're going to New York instead. At that moment a police officer rings the bell asking about the baby. Trevor rushes to the lobby with the kid and the cop compares him to George's picture, realizing it's not the same child. After Trevor tells him what happened, the officer is too confused and calls Georgia. While they wait for her, Trevor invites him to the apartment. The cop is even more weirded out when he sees Trevor use the poop on the elevator and later put it away in a drawer. Soon the couple returns to visit Trevor with a gift for the baby, so he invites them to stay as well. The doorbell rings again and this time it's Lionel, who was told to leave his apartment keys with Trevor. Since there's so much food, Trevor invites him to join them too. When the elevator opens for Lionel, the crazy dog runs out and Annabelle runs after him, so she ends up staying as well. While everyone gets comfortable, Trevor gets a call from Jess, who reveals she and Maddie never left London because all flights were cancelled. They want to spend Christmas with him, so he tells them to come to the penthouse. When Georgia comes for the baby, she also ends up joining the celebration. The group has lots of fun singing together, sharing a drink, and eating the delicious food. Trevor gifts his other shoe to the dog so he can keep the pair. The police officer dedicates the toast to Trevor and the baby, but when they turn around the kid is gone. They desperately look for him and find him in the manger. Suddenly the doorbell rings and Trevor checks the camera. It turns out the penthouse owners decided to come to London after all.
Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you on my next video.